Okay, so that's our base template. Now let's actually shatter this in a method that you might find familiar. So I'm gonna make an add here, and the add is just gonna make a point there at the origin, which is literally that point there. So we got a point, then we can say copy and transform. Again, the copy SOP was broken into a bunch of pieces. Let's just choose some number. I'm gonna say 8. Basically, I wanna make 8 cutting planes, kind of like a pizza, to chop this all up. So we're gonna center them all on that. So we'll do a attribute randomize, as usual. Do it to n, inside sphere. So we got a whole bunch of different normals now pointing out from that. We're gonna take a grid, and we're gonna copy using the other part of the copy SOP. Let's make this a vertical grid, and let's use a copy to points. Let's copy this to the points. And there we go. It's way too big for our purposes. Also, let's not copy anything over. I don't want it to have like the wrong normals or anything crazy like that. So considering that this outlined thing here is what we want, again, this is too big. So let's just say that the size comes down substantially to something probably pretty small. Maybe like that. Seems fine. And then we'll also want to bring up the rows and columns. I like to do that sometimes. We'll just make it like super high. We'll make it basically what we can more or less match that. So that's fine. Or maybe we'll just, I like 75 better. Something like that. And then we'll want to put a mountain on it to give it some character. That's not too bad. It's kind of missing actually the center of this entirely, so that is pretty bad. Let's make the element size much smaller. Oh, too small. Let's say, again, this should all be relative to the size of the geometry here. So I was gonna say like something really small. And as you can see, as we make the element size smaller, we have to compensate with the height as well. So maybe like half that. Something like that. So that's pretty good. Let's just run it. Let's just see what it looks like. We may have to tweak, of course, from here. So we'll say Boolean. The last time that we had the full geometry was this Boolean, so I'll grab him, bring it to here. Before we even hook up the other one, just change this to shatter, because we don't need to waste our time having it calculate the intersect. Change this to surface. We can keep the detriangulate on now, because we're not going to do any more Booleans from here. So click on to that guy. Oh, I lost my bar here somehow. Look at this. And then that seems actually relatively reasonable. Let me put a null here. Let's say that this is, again, this will look different every frame. Let's see what the exploded view actually looks like. Well, we'll want to do a couple of things first. We want to have again, the color and all that jazz on this thing. Like we want that to be on the planes that are coming into the Boolean to make sure that our new pieces benefit from all that. Although I keep forgetting that this is here. So get rid of our B inside A's on this. And I'm just going to put this on manual so I don't have to keep waiting for this to... Oh, well, that was it anyway. Cool. Put the explode pieces here to see what it looks like. It seems to think it's all one piece. Let's put an assemble down. There we go. Blows up. So we can see the inside looks pretty good. Something like that. Might be nice actually to, because we have so many like kind of self-similar pieces here. Might be nice maybe to have the mountain change. Well, yeah, it's fine. It might be nice to have to make sure that we don't get too many new pieces. So at any rate, here we go. Here's our cool shatter. And we got the normals, that everything comes through just fine. Great. So now what else can we do with this? Well, if we make this into create packed geometry, so now these are, 73 separate pieces. I want to have these kind of, jagged and sticking up into the air. I'm going to go to flat shaded now. How can I do that? Well, we can bind these pieces to a piece of ground that, let's say, is making that general shape. So what do I mean by that? Let's put a grid down and have this grid more or less match. See, it's huge right now. Let's have it more or less match the boundaries of this, at least in the X and Z directions. So if this is the pieces here, let's have the grid refer to that and say, kind of like from before, let's use these B-box things and say, B-box back to pieces and get me the X size. And then B-box back to the Z, get me the Z size. And now it's more or less the same shape as that. Let's make it a little bit bigger, just so that we have some breathing room. Like that. So that's pretty good. This is probably enough rows and columns. We may not even need that many. I kind of want like a very coarse movement here. And what we're going to do is, again, we're going to bind these pieces to this. So we'll say, start with this grid, and then we will use a soft transform to kind of select the border and move it up. So take a group, hook it up to the grid. The group will be edges. We'll not do anything there. We'll do the include by edges and say just get the unshared edges, which, as you can see, it's selecting just the outside. So we'll just call this border. We'll say, hey, soft transform, only work on the border. Well, actually, let's just do it on the points itself, because the transform wants a point group. So there we go. So we've got that now. The soft radius is way too high because what we're working with is so small here. So I'm going to say maybe about 0.1 is good. And then let's move it up. So something like this. Or the more or less that we do this, it's going to be pretty subtle. And again, we'll work on that in a minute. One thing I would like to change, though, is the kind of fall off here. The more we up this tangent here, the more it'll kind of curve down from the edge, which I like. This is not anything that has to be exact, but that should be fine. Let's go ahead and make that point deform now and just see what we got so far. Take the pieces. Here's the rest, which is again this, and then let's make that be the unrested. So as you can see, as we transform it, it pulls them apart. And it's pulling them apart, kind of going upwards. So disabling this will look the way it used to look, and then this pulls up the outsides while kind of sending the interior down as well. We can basically keep those as the defaults, I think. We don't even necessarily want this to move up that much. We want it to be pretty subtle. Pretty subtle. I don't even really want it to interfere with the sim that much. Just really kind of enough to see the cracks forming. So that's pretty good. And we can even add maybe add a mountain here. Well, mountain's going crazy with that, but you can imagine why. We want this to be absolutely like tiny, just really tiny. Same thing here. Even that, just a little bit of that. So now we go from having this to that, so that they don't all come up evenly. Now we've got something pretty interesting. Every frame should look pretty wildly different, as you can see. Mostly because of that original shape, the original shape of the outside of it. If we wanted to be extra sure that it looks different, we could say like, where's my randomize here. This could be, give that like $F to make sure that the orientations of the various cutting planes are different every frame. Something like that. Cool.